Have you ever wondered why some women seem to carry a silence that speaks louder than words? A gravity that unsettles those who encounter her, as though she is older than her years and wiser than any room she walks into? There is a mystery about her, not the kind manufactured to entice, but a depth that feels earned through fire and solitude. She is not loud, nor does she crave attention in the ways others do. Yet her presence feels like an ancient mirror, forcing you to see yourself more clearly than you ever intended.
She is what Jung might call the embodiment of the archetypal wise woman.
A living reminder that the soul carries ages within it, and that every encounter with her is a summons to awaken something sleeping within yourself. For the old soul woman, attraction does not play by ordinary rules. She does not chase the illusions that society feeds, nor does she bow to the games that dominate shallow connections. While others remain trapped in the collective shadow, blind to their own compulsions, she has walked through darkness and returned carrying fragments of forgotten truth. Men are drawn to her and frightened by her in equal measure, for she embodies a paradox, softness laced with unshakable strength, compassion entwined with uncompromising standards. If you are a woman listening, you may have felt this within yourself at times, that strange tension between wanting to belong and knowing that you are not meant to blend into the noise. Jung taught that the individuation process, the great work of becoming whole, demands separation from the herd. The old soul woman lives this instinctively. She senses that conformity drains her vitality, that chasing external validation shackles her spirit. Instead, she watches the crowd, often with a quiet melancholy, knowing how easy it is for people to become trapped in illusions of status, approval, or fleeting affection. But she herself is not immune to suffering. In fact, her depth was forged through it. Every old soul carries wounds that refuse to be ignored. Perhaps she grew up unseen, misunderstood, or forced into silence. Perhaps betrayal once cut through her like a blade, teaching her that not everyone who claims love is capable of giving it. Whatever her past, it carved in her the capacity to look beyond appearances, to sense the shadow behind the mask. She does not just hear words, she feels the intention behind them, and that is why many cannot hide from her. To stand before an old soul woman is to stand exposed, yet here lies the irony. While she sees so deeply into others, so few ever see into her. Men may project onto her the archetypes of lover, mother, muse, or savior, but she is none of these illusions. She is her own becoming, resisting containment by another's fantasy. Jung would call this the battle between anima projection and true encounter. Most men want the dream, few can withstand the reality. And so she learns to walk alone, not because she despises love, but because she refuses to dilute herself for it. Ask yourself, how often have you dimmed your fire to make someone else comfortable? How many times have you silenced your intuition because you feared being too much, too intimidating, too different? The old soul woman eventually reaches a breaking point where such compromises are no longer possible. She recognizes that shrinking herself is not love, it is self-betrayal. Her energy is not meant to be wasted convincing others of her worth. Her presence alone is her statement, and those who cannot stand in its light are not meant to remain. And yet, the old soul woman does not grow bitter. She is not cold, though the world may misinterpret her reserve. Instead, she learns the art of Stoic strength. Like Marcus Aurelius writing in the dim hours of dawn, she accepts that life is impermanent, that suffering is unavoidable, that people often fail not out of malice, but out of blindness. Her compassion is vast, but it is no longer naive. She gives without attaching chains, loves without losing herself, and grieves without collapsing into despair. This balance, between heart and boundary, softness and steel, is what makes her radiant and terrifying all at once. Those who encounter her may feel both captivated and unsettled. Men may call her mysterious, women may call her intimidating, but in truth she is simply living in alignment with something eternal, Her very existence is a quiet rebellion against the superficial values of the age. She does not compete. She does not perform. She simply is. And in that being she awakens something ancient in others, the longing to rise above mediocrity, to shed the masks, to remember the deeper self they abandoned. This is the hidden mark of the old soul woman. She is not here to be possessed. She is here to remind. She stands as living evidence that wholeness is possible, but it will cost you every illusion you hold dear. To approach her is to risk transformation, and many are not ready. But for those who are, her presence becomes a doorway into the profound. The old soul woman is not measured by the speed of her ascent in the external world, nor by the noise she can create to prove her worth. She moves differently, as though time itself bends around her choices. Where others rush, she pauses. Where others cling, she releases. Her rhythm is not dictated by urgency, but by alignment, a kind of inner compass that points her not toward comfort, but toward truth. Jung might say she is guided by the self, the archetype of wholeness that pulls the psyche toward integration. And integration is never rushed. It demands patience, silence, and the courage to face the places within that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Her aura unsettles because it reflects what many repress. A man who fears his own vulnerability will find her presence unbearable, for she does not flatter his defenses. She senses the cracks in his armor, the shadow he hides, the shame he masks with bravado. Her gaze is not judgmental, but it is uncompromisingly honest. And honesty can feel like an attack to those who cling to illusions. That is why some retreat from her, whispering that she is too much, too intense, or too complicated. But these are the words of those unwilling to step beyond the shallows of themselves. To you, woman listening, this rejection is not evidence of your unworthiness. It is proof of your power. Every soul at a higher frequency will face resistance. You are not meant to be universally embraced. You are meant to act as a filter, separating those who can meet you in depth from those who cannot. Just as fire refines metal, your presence refines the intentions of those who draw near. Some will break in the heat of your truth. Others will rise, purified, capable of something real. This is why relationships for the old soul woman are never casual. She does not engage for mere distraction, nor does she settle for connections built on convenience. She craves what is rare, the union that arises not from need but from resonance. It is not the shallow attraction of bodies, though that too has its place, but the deeper recognition of souls that feels like remembering. Jung described it as the anima and animus dance, the meeting of inner opposites projected outward, forcing each to confront the unfinished work within themselves. The old soul woman knows this truth instinctively, which is why she cannot be satisfied with surface-level affection. To touch her body without touching her essence is to leave her starving. But this hunger comes at a price. For in desiring depth she risks loneliness. In a world enthralled by distraction she waits, not passively, not in despair, but in a state of faithful detachment. She tends to her garden, her craft, her inner life. She becomes whole not by demanding someone else complete her, but by honoring every fragment within herself. Jung called this individuation, the sacred process of becoming undivided. And when she achieves it, something extraordinary happens. She no longer needs love, yet she becomes magnetic to it. Men sense this difference immediately, though they may not understand it. Most women are caught in cycles of pleasing, performing, or competing, bending themselves into shapes that society rewards. But she does not bend. She does not perform. Her silence is not weakness but sovereignty. This unsettles men who are accustomed to control, for they cannot lure her with empty promises or tame her with shallow attention. She cannot be conquered because she has already conquered herself, and yet her strength does not harden into arrogance. She is not above love. She is simply unwilling to distort herself for it. Her tenderness is immense, but it is given with discernment. To the right man, she offers a sanctuary, a rare safety that comes from being fully seen and accepted. But to the wrong man, she is a mirror he will flee from. He will call her demanding when she merely requires honesty. He will call her distant when she refuses to beg. He will call her cold when she chooses self-respect over self-abandonment. This paradox defines her existence, adored by some, misunderstood by most. She belongs everywhere and nowhere. She is the woman who can sit at a crowded table and feel the ache of solitude, not because she is unloved, but because she knows love without truth is emptiness. She carries within her both the ache of exile and the beauty of transcendence. Like the mystics of old, she walks among the world but is not entirely of it, and perhaps that is why her presence feels sacred. She is not here to be consumed like fleeting pleasure. She is here to awaken, to disturb, to remind others of what lies forgotten within themselves. Her life is her teaching, her silence, her sermon. She is the rare force that does not demand you change. She simply embodies such truth that change becomes inevitable in her orbit. To recognize her is to feel something ancient stir within you, a whisper that says, "There is more, you are more. Do not waste yourself on the trivial." And to ignore her is to miss the chance to awaken from the dream of mediocrity. The old soul woman carries in her body the memory of countless cycles of breaking and renewal. She knows what it means to be shattered, but unlike others who remain fractured, she has gathered her broken pieces and shaped them into a mosaic more radiant than the original form. Pain has been her sculptor, solitude her mentor, and silence her sacred ally. Where others drown in heartbreak or bend beneath rejection, she allows loss to carve depth within her. She does not run from the ache, it becomes her initiation. Jung spoke of the shadow as the hidden twin of the self, the part we exile and repress, yet which holds the key to transformation. Most people spend their lives fleeing their shadow, projecting it outward, blaming others for what they cannot bear within themselves. But the old soul woman has faced hers. She has sat in dark rooms, trembling not from fear of monsters outside, but from the weight of ghosts within. Abandonment, betrayal, humiliation. She has let them rise, let them burn, and in doing so, she has stripped them of their power. This intimacy with her shadow is what makes her luminous. Light is not born from denial, but from integration. When she smiles, it is not the fragile mask of someone pretending life is always gentle. It is the hard-won expression of one who has seen despair and chosen to rise regardless. That smile carries more than charm. It carries truth. And truth is magnetic to those who seek it, terrifying to those who avoid it. If you, listening now, recognize fragments of this within yourself, then you know the burden it brings. You know what it is to feel alien in rooms where superficial chatter reigns, to crave conversations that peel back the surface, to long for connections that ignite not just your body, but your soul. You know the exhaustion of being misread, called aloof when you are simply discerning, called cold when you are simply unwilling to pretend, called intense when you are simply real. But let this be clear. The world does not misunderstand you because you are flawed. It misunderstands you because you are rare, and rarity unsettles. It provokes jealousy, projection, even hostility. The collective resists what it cannot categorize. And the old soul woman defies every category. She is neither saint nor sinner, neither submissive nor dominant, neither fragile nor invincible. She is both. She is all. She is the union of opposites Jung described, the alchemy of wholeness embodied. Yet her challenge is not merely to endure misunderstanding. It is to resist the temptation to shrink because of it. Many old soul women hide their brilliance to avoid loneliness, diluting themselves to appear relatable. But in doing so, they betray the very gift they were born to carry. Jung would call this betrayal of the self, a regression into conformity. The task, instead, is to remain unapologetically whole, even if that wholeness isolates. For true resonance can only occur when you stand fully revealed. This is why the old soul woman does not cling to validation. She knows that to be adored for a mask is to live in exile from one's own soul. Better to walk alone in truth than to be celebrated for a lie. This detachment is not arrogance, it is sovereignty. It is the Stoic recognition, echoed by Epictetus, that what is not yours to control is not yours to mourn. She releases what does not align because she understands that clinging only prolongs suffering. Men, sensing this detachment, often mistake it for indifference. They do not realize that her love, when given, is fierce, loyal, and unyielding. But she does not scatter it recklessly. She does not pour herself into empty vessels. She chooses with precision, and that choice is her power. A man who earns her devotion does not merely gain affection. He gains the rarest thing of all, a mirror that reflects his highest self. Yet he must be ready, for such love demands the death of ego, the courage to confront his own shadow, and the willingness to rise into his own individuation. And so many fall away. They retreat, shaken by the intensity she awakens. They go back to easier loves, lighter pleasures, illusions that demand nothing. But even in leaving, they are changed. For once you have been touched by the presence of an old soul woman, mediocrity tastes hollow. She imprints not through possession but through revelation. She does not bind herself to you. You bind yourself to the memory of what she awakened in you. She, meanwhile, does not chase. She does not beg. She simply continues her path, trusting the ancient rhythm of her soul. She is not impatient, for she knows that everything aligned with truth arrives in its time. Until then, she becomes her own companion, her own sanctuary, her own mirror. She embodies the very thing so many fear, a woman complete without possession, and in this completeness lies the paradox of her allure. For the more she stands alone, the more magnetic she becomes. The less she needs, the more others crave her. The more she refuses to perform, the more unforgettable she is. She is a living embodiment of Jung's words. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And she has claimed that privilege in full. There is a sacred stillness that surrounds the old soul woman. The kind of presence that feels less like personality and more like destiny. She does not chase the world. She draws it toward her. Yet this magnetism is not cultivated. It is not a trick or strategy. It arises naturally because she has done the work that most fear, the work of integration, of standing face to face with both the shadow and the light and refusing to abandon either. Jung taught that wholeness does not come from perfection, but from reconciliation of opposites. And she embodies this reconciliation. She has known rage and tenderness, fragility and resilience, despair and transcendence. Each polarity has passed through her like a season, and instead of clinging to one and denying the other, she has embraced them all. This acceptance makes her untouchable. Insults slide off her, not because she feels nothing, but because she has already made peace with the parts of herself others try to use against her. When people call her too much, she does not shrink. She understands that intensity is not excess, but truth in its rawest form. When they call her hard to understand, she smiles quietly. For complexity is not a flaw. It is the sign of depth unmeasured by shallow eyes. When they call her unattainable, she knows what they are truly saying, that they cannot yet reach the level of authenticity she requires. These judgments are not wounds. They are confirmations of her difference. But this difference is heavy. Many old soul women spend years in silence, wondering if something is wrong with them, wondering why they cannot enjoy what others seem to find fulfilling. The fleeting loves, the empty laughter, the constant need for validation, it all feels hollow. They are tempted to conform, to numb themselves, to pretend. Yet the soul does not allow pretense for long. The more she resists her nature, the more restless she becomes, until finally she surrenders to her own calling. And this surrender is liberation. For once she accepts her role as an old soul, she no longer seeks to be understood by the many. She learns to cherish the few who resonate, the rare souls who meet her in the same depth. Her circle may be small, her loves few, but they are real, and for her, reality is worth more than abundance. In relationships, she becomes both mirror and catalyst. Men who enter her orbit are forced to see themselves clearly, often for the first time. If he is insecure, he will feel it magnified. If he is hiding, she will sense it immediately. If he is ready, her presence will ignite his potential. This is why she is remembered long after she is gone. She does not merely touch a man, she transforms him. But the transformation is not always comfortable. For to be loved by her is to be challenged to grow. This is why she does not fall for words, promises, or performances. She listens with her intuition, watching not what is said, but what is done. She can sense incongruence the way one feels a storm in the air. Her discernment is not harsh, it is precise. She knows that the man who truly sees her will not just desire her body, but will revere her essence. And until such a man arrives, she walks alone without fear. To you listening, perhaps this solitude has felt like punishment. But understand this, solitude is her initiation. It is the crucible in which her power is forged. Alone, she learns not to depend on constant affirmation. Alone, she discovers her own rhythms, her own voice, her own sovereignty. Alone, she becomes unshakable, and only once she has mastered aloneness can she offer love that is free, not rooted in need, but in choice. The Stoics would recognize her path. Seneca wrote that, "He who is brave is free," and the old soul woman's bravery lies in her refusal to betray herself for belonging. She chooses freedom over approval, truth over comfort, solitude over falseness. This is her quiet rebellion, her radical act in a world that thrives on conformity. And in doing so, she becomes a guide, whether she intends to or not. For others watching her cannot help but feel confronted. They sense in her a standard they have abandoned in themselves. She does not demand they rise, yet her very being awakens their dormant longing to live authentically. She is not a teacher in the traditional sense, yet she teaches by existence. She embodies what Jung called the self in its fullness, and in doing so, she lights a path for others still wandering in the fog of projection and illusion. And though she is often misunderstood, though her journey is lonely at times, she carries within her a serenity that cannot be shaken. She knows that her life is not about pleasing the collective, it is about honoring the soul's eternal rhythm. She trusts the unfolding, trusts the timing, trusts the wisdom within her, for she has learned that the soul does not rush. It simply reveals, layer by layer, until what is hidden becomes whole. There is a fire beneath the calm exterior of the old soul woman, a hidden intensity that cannot be extinguished by the ordinary struggles of life. This fire is not born from ambition or ego, but from something older, something eternal. It is the quiet flame of self-possession, the unwavering conviction that her worth is not determined by another's recognition. She has touched the depths of despair and emerged with her own heart in her hands. Scarred but unbroken, proof that she belongs to herself first. In Jung's language, she has passed through the underworld of the psyche and returned bearing treasure. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every exile from shallow circles has only deepened her reservoir of wisdom. She carries within her the archetype of the alchemist, transforming poison into medicine, wounds into power, solitude into sovereignty. Where others see endings, she sees initiations. Where others collapse, she rebuilds. It is not resilience in the shallow sense, it is rebirth. And because of this, she is not afraid of loss. The world cannot manipulate her with the threat of abandonment, for she has already faced it and survived. She is not enslaved by the fear of rejection, for she knows rejection often means redirection. She is not dependent on approval, for she has built her own approval within. This makes her dangerous to those who thrive on control, because nothing external holds dominion over her. For you who resonate with these words, perhaps you feel that same resistance in your blood, that refusal to kneel to false power, that instinct to walk away from anything that demands you betray yourself. This resistance is not arrogance, it is remembrance. It is the soul recalling that you were not born to grovel or beg. You were born to choose, and the old soul woman knows that her choice is her greatest weapon. She chooses carefully, not out of fear, but out of reverence for her own energy. To be in her space, to receive her affection, to hold her trust, these are privileges, not entitlements. She is not easily impressed because she sees through performance. Grand gestures mean little if they are not anchored in truth. She values consistency over charm, substance over noise, and integrity over image. For she knows that love without truth is nothing but an illusion, and illusion is poison to her soul. Men often find themselves both drawn and undone by her. To the immature, she feels like a challenge to conquer, a mystery to unravel, an ego-boosting prize. But they soon realize she cannot be won through strategies or games. She sees the game before it even begins, and she refuses to play. To the awakened, however, she feels like home. Not because she makes life easier, but because she makes it real. She demands presence, honesty, courage, and in return she offers a depth of love that feels eternal. But even here, she does not abandon herself. She knows that love must be a choice freely made, not a cage willingly entered. She can walk beside someone in deep devotion, but she never chains her soul to theirs. If she senses manipulation, dishonesty, or disrespect, she leaves without hesitation. Not out of cruelty, but out of fidelity to her own worth. She understands the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And her reaction is always the same. Choose truth, even if it costs comfort. This is what makes her so unforgettable. She is not the woman who lingers in bitterness after parting. She does not beg, she does not cling, she does not chase. She departs with grace, leaving behind only the echo of what she awakened in you, and that echo haunts. For once you have felt the touch of authenticity, once you have glimpsed the reflection of your highest self in her gaze, everything else feels counterfeit. She is not addicted to being remembered, yet she always is. And still, she is not untouchable in the way people imagine. She feels deeply, loves profoundly, and aches in ways few will ever know. But she does not collapse into that ache. She holds it, cradles it, and lets it shape her into something even stronger. She is like the ocean, calm on the surface, storm in her depths, endless in her capacity to contain contradictions. For the old soul woman does not seek to escape the human experience. She does not flee from pain or chase only pleasure. She accepts the whole, life and death, love and loss, joy and sorrow, as sacred parts of the journey. This acceptance makes her radiant in ways that defy beauty standards, magnetic in ways that defy logic, powerful in ways that defy control. She is not playing the game of appearances. She is embodying the truth of existence itself. And the truth she embodies is simple, yet terrifying to those who resist it. That freedom comes not from possession, but from release, not from clinging, but from surrender, not from illusion, but from reality. She carries this truth like a crown, invisible yet undeniable, and it makes her both queenly and untamed. The world often whispers that such women are rare. The deeper truth is that many are born with this soul, but few are brave enough to embrace it. To be an old soul woman is not a title bestowed, it is a path chosen. And once chosen, it cannot be undone, and so her journey leads not toward conquest of others, but conquest of self. The old soul woman has learned that power is not control, not dominance, not superiority. Power is presence. It is the ability to stand unshaken in her truth, to resist being bent by manipulation or seduced by illusions, to walk away from what does not honor her soul even when her heart aches for it. This power is quiet, but undeniable, the kind that shifts a room without raising a voice, the kind that lingers in memory long after she has gone. Jung taught that individuation is the destiny of every soul, the merging of shadow and light into one whole. The old soul woman does not merely theorize this. She lives it. She has taken the fragments of herself that the world once told her to discard, her sensitivity, her depth, her intensity, and instead of hiding them, she has woven them into the fabric of her being. She is whole because she has stopped trying to be palatable. She is free because she no longer needs permission to exist as she is. She understands now that love cannot be begged for. Affection bought with self-betrayal is not love, it is bondage. Attention won through performance is not intimacy, it is theater. To demand that another define her worth is to hand over the crown she was born with. And so she refuses. She stands in her own sovereignty, not as defiance, but as truth. You listening now perhaps feel the stir of this truth in your own blood. You know what it is to be exhausted from chasing validation, from contorting yourself into someone else's fantasy, from shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant to contain you. But here is the lesson of the old soul woman. You do not need to chase, to beg, to twist yourself into smaller shapes. Your worth is not in how well you are received, but in how fully you embody yourself. She has learned that solitude is not emptiness but sacred ground. It is where she builds her sanctuary, where she hears the voice of her soul without interruption. It is in this solitude that she realizes she has never truly been alone. Her ancestors, her archetypes, her eternal self have walked with her always. She does not wait for someone else to rescue her from silence. She fills it with her own music, her own art, her own breath. This is why she does not crumble when others leave. She has already learned that departure is not an ending, but a clearing, a space for something more aligned to arrive. In her relationships, she no longer bargains. She no longer trades pieces of her authenticity for scraps of attention. She no longer accepts being half seen or half loved. She knows now that love must meet her in her fullness, or it is not love at all. And so she waits, not with bitterness, not with impatience, but with the serene confidence of one who knows her value. She does not fear missing out because she knows that what is meant for her will not pass her by. This serenity is what makes her radiant. It is what makes her magnetic without trying, unforgettable without effort. It is what makes men call her mysterious when in truth she is simply real. She has no need for masks, no desire for games. Her very existence becomes a challenge to the superficiality of the age, a living reminder that depth still exists, that truth still walks among us, that the soul cannot be silenced. She is not without tenderness. In fact, her tenderness is what makes her formidable. For when she chooses to love, she does so with the entirety of her being. But it is love offered freely, never in desperation. It is love rooted in choice, not need. And because she does not need, her love is pure. It does not bind, it liberates. It does not consume, it ignites. It does not diminish, it expands. In her presence, one feels both safe and summoned. Safe because she accepts without judgment. Summoned because she refuses to let you remain smaller than you are. This duality is what makes her unforgettable. To love her is to be undone and remade, to confront the deepest truths of yourself and rise into a higher version of who you could be. And when she finally arrives at the peak of her journey, she understands that the greatest freedom of all is detachment, not coldness, but the serene release of needing the world to validate her existence. She has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to fear. She is whole. She is free. She is sovereign.